Okay, hi everyone. So thanks again for completing your intercultural development inventory. What we're going to be doing now is looking at the group results for all of us. So here we go. I'm just going to share my screen here and walk you through. So if you decided to meet with me and get your personal intercultural development inventory, you would get a report that looks something like this. So what we're going to go through here is the group profile report, but yours would be an individual profile report. So this report is based on 20 of you who completed the IDI inventory. And what we'll do is I'll just show you the different aspects of it. So it reminds you here about the intercultural development continuum, which I talked about in the initial discussion and presentation. But again, it's just this ability to shift perspective and adapt behavior to different cultural differences or commonalities. Okay, so this is not, again, an assessment of how good you are or how great you are. It's simply a marker of right now, currently, the way you are in your life right now with your current experiences. How are you responding to cultural difference? Are you more monocultural, tend to be focused on one culture like your own, or do you have more of an intercultural global mindset? Neither one is good or bad. It just simply explains where we're at. So here you can take another look at the continuum if you'd like, along the way where people can fall. It's a developmental model again. And if you need a reminder, here's a summary of the different areas as we talked about in the first presentation. So the first thing I'm going to show you is the perceived orientation. So here's where, as a group, here's where everyone as a group, we think we're at. So as a group, we think we're somewhere between acceptance and adaptation. And this is a pretty common result. So a lot of people will see themselves as, you know, very accepting of other cultures and being responsive to other cultures. So this is pretty typically what we would expect to see in groups. And most of the time, we're not quite in this area yet. So here's in fact where the group did fall. So this group as a whole, sort of, again, put all together, fell in sort of higher minimization. And this is a really common result. I would say most people, particularly people who are currently living in the West part of the world, usually fall in the minimization area. You can see we're at the sort of the higher end here at 93.69. So this is actually where we're falling as a group, even though we think or we'd like to be moving towards acceptance and adaptation. Okay, so this is our primary orientation. So we talked about this briefly, but I just want to highlight what it means to say we're in minimization. So this orientation gap just shows us how different our perception is from where we're actually at. And it's quite a bit. We are misreading our skills a little bit. Oh, my apologies. I have a dog with a squeaky dog toy. Ozzy, 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. So here, what we see is if we look closely at the orientation gap that we had there, we can see we're a little bit inaccurate about where we're falling, and that's okay. We all want to be striving towards something, and so it's natural that we want to see ourselves at the higher end of a continuum. So, but let's look at minimization. So again, minimization is a really common orientation. It's where most people tend to fall, and there's good reason for that. Okay, it's because when we minimize sort of culture as a whole, it's because we don't want to stereotype. We want to avoid stereotyping other cultures. We want to find where we're all similar, and when we're kind of looking for the ways in which we're all the same, that's what we call minimization. So we just want to focus on how we're the same and not look at how we're different. And, you know, it's a very good way to be in many ways, and it's very culturally acceptable, particularly in the West. Okay, so it avoids stereotyping and biased behavior by treating each person as an individual. And you might, as in a minimization orientation, you're interested in differences and the customs of other people, but you just don't yet have the ability to, say, adapt to those cultural practices yet. Totally fine, just maybe you don't have the knowledge yet or how exactly to go about doing that. But again, like I was saying, this minimization orientation really recognizes the essential humanity of every person, and people want to act in really tolerant ways. So this is a very widely embracing approach. One of the things we can find in minimization orientation is one may not be really fully aware of how their ideas or the way that they see the world is actually grounded in their particular culture. And in fact, it might just be, you just think that's just the way you believe because that's just the way it is. But in fact, so much of what we decide and know comes from our own cultural background. So like I was saying, it tends to assume that people from other cultures are basically like us, you know, and our cultural views, we try to minimize the differences between us. But one thing to note is if you're a non-dominant culture member in a dominant culture, so say you were, for example, an international student here at Mohawk College, but you're not from Canada, sometimes minimization can be used as a coping strategy. So really just trying to find those ways that we're the same can actually help you cope so that you can feel a bit safe and secure and familiar with the place that you're in. And one of the other feature of minimization is that differences, people that are in this orientation don't view differences as a threat to their own cultural practice. So just because you practice, say, in this particular way, that's not a threat to me. That's just something that's different from me. So again, that's another feature in that way. So one of the pieces, what we would talk about in terms of a developmental opportunity or a place where we could grow is we just might struggle to bridge across diverse communities when differences need to be more deeply understood. Okay, so if there's some conflict or whatnot, it can be really a lot more difficult to sort of see from the other lens. So the best way to move forward in this way is to really understand what is your particular culture. What is things that are specific to your own framework and your cultural self-awareness? And then start thinking about culture as a whole, and then look at different culture-specific frameworks. Okay? So I'm not going to go through the education example. In fact, what I'll do is you will get a copy of this group debrief report that will be sent to you, and you can read it a little bit more closely. Whew, excuse me. So anyways, that is your overall group debrief report. If you'd like to see your individual results, please email me at Michelle, MICHELLE.Turan, TURAN @mohawkcollege.ca. And I'll send you your individual reports. And after you read them, you can decide if you want to meet with me and we can talk about your results even further. So thanks for listening and have a great day.